Hey, 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 fam. I see you all in the chat already. I love it. I always love to see y'all chit-chatting with each other, getting to know one another. Welcome. For those who don't know me, I'm Coach Nat, the Keto Bikini Pro. Welcome to another Monday Masterclass. Not just another Monday Masterclass, but the Monday Masterclass of all masterclasses. I kind of say that every week, but it's just because the topics seem to be getting better and better and more. Let me turn this volume up, and more to the point of what y'all really want to know about. So this is an epic one tonight, if I do say so myself. We are talking about everybody's favorite topic or least favorite topic, maybe, depending on where you're coming from. Oh, hold on. Let me shut down my email so it doesn't keep bothering me throughout. Here we go. Okay, cool. La, la, la. Drum roll. Metabolism. Do me a favor, ladies. Drop into the comments some of the things that you cannot stand to hear out there about metabolism. What do y'all hear people saying that just drive you crazy about metabolism? Or what is it about metabolism that just annoys the heck out of you, period? Maybe you're frustrated with your own metabolism. Let me know. Some of y'all let me know in the Facebook group already. This was awesome. You asked some really good questions. I've got those questions here, so I want to make sure I get to all the questions that were asked in the group. But drop anything else right now. When you hear the term metabolism, what comes up for you? Kaya says, you have to eat 5 times a day. Mary says, eat less, move more. What else y'all got? I dropped a little bit of somewhat of a trick question. Actually, I didn't do it. Coach Mary Grace did. Dropped a little question in the Facebook group before we announced that this was going to be our topic tonight. And the question was, CICO or hormones? Which camp are you in? CICO being calories in, calories out. And I should have known, my Facebook community, my tribe, y'all are just too educated to get tricked by a question like that. I think almost every single person that answered it said, it's not that simple, it's both, and yada, 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 details. I was like, I love my group. Y'all listen, y'all get it, y'all absorb. Sorry, I got this little thing that is just distracting me, this Michael Jackson curl. All right. I'll try not to be distracted by it. Shannon. Ooh, this is a good one. People that say they are in starvation mode. Starvation mode. That came up actually just recently inside the Academy. And that is what prompted this masterclass topic tonight. So thank you again. Shout out to the Keto Bikini Academy. If anybody here does not know what that is, drop in the comments, and one of these ladies will tell you all about what it is. They all know, or ask me in the group, or comment on the YouTube video if you're watching this later after it's live. We will tell you all about the Academy. But this is the question I got. I will leave the names of the innocent out, but this is the question that I got that prompted this topic. Oh, Mary, let's put that up there. CICO is a sham. Is it though? We'll get into that tonight. All right, here's the question I got that prompted this. Hoping you can give me more insight on reverse dieting. She shared an experience of a past program she was in and said that when she wasn't making progress, she was told she wasn't trusting the process and that maybe she wasn't being honest with herself about what she's eating, because if she's in a deficit, she will have weight loss, and there's no such thing as starvation mode. She says, now you guys have me reverse dieting and I'm eating more than ever. I feel I'm active. Basically, she's she's now getting the progress she wasn't getting before when she was in a deep deficit. And we've had her eating more food and she's getting progress she didn't get before. So her question was, why did I not lose as effectively on low calories? She then went on to say that I'm not complaining about the higher calories. In fact, it's made this process so much easier. While I still feel hungry from time to time, I don't feel like I'm constantly fighting cravings because I'm not hungry all the time. So shout out to the member who will remain nameless for that amazing question. So I will tell you my short answer to her, because I think it would be helpful for you all just to get this kind of, if you want the cliff notes of the masterclass, here it is right here. What I explained to her there, and we will be going deeper into tonight here, is that while starvation mode is not really a thing, metabolic adaptation is, and we're going to be talking about that tonight. You could eat low calorie for a period of time, extremely low calorie, and probably get incredible results if you have not been doing that. If you haven't been dieting, if you have never dieted before and you just went super low calorie, you absolutely would get incredible results, most likely. But for all the things that she just mentioned, it is going to become very difficult. It's going to be very unsustainable. And if you were to sustain those low calories for a very long period of time, and actually some studies show that it doesn't take very long. It could be a very quick, short period of time where these adaptations start to happen. But eventually you will adapt, your body will adapt, because that is what the body is always trying to do, is adapt and find homeostasis, find normalcy. It wants to maintain this normal, steady status quo. And so when we do things to disrupt it, it gets a little bit thrown off. So it will then try to adapt. And if it continues to adapt to dieting down to lower calories, your body will learn to sustain itself on lower calories. And then if you sneeze in the direction of 1 extra calorie, you'll start gaining weight. And the deficit, I'm putting that in air quotes because the deficit no longer works. But the truth is, you're just no longer in a deficit, because the old deficit has now become your maintenance. If you cut again and again and again and again until you are now eating air, you will keep losing. But eventually, where do you go from that? That's the question I always ask. So reverse dieting, which is what we have this member doing, is a careful strategic process where we restore the metabolism in the direction we want it to go, which is up. We want to improve the metabolism. We want to do that through training, recovery, all the things. I'm going to be sharing some tips and tricks for how you can improve your metabolism. But the goal of that being so that you can maintain your homeostasis at a higher food intake, so you don't have to starve yourself forever. The body is amazingly adaptive. This is a beautiful thing, and this is what we're going to get into tonight, is that you don't have to be afraid of metabolic adaptation. It's nothing to be afraid of. It is a natural process. It happens in both directions, so we can improve it. Let's see. Another major reason that you may not have gotten results when you were on a super restrictive, incredibly low-calorie diet before, as she mentioned, she would be, blamed, let's say, for not accurately tracking her intake or lying to herself or whatnot. But she also mentioned how much more miserable she was doing that lower calorie diet. So the truth is, when we are in too deep of a deficit for too long, our body starts sending us these signals to eat, and don't stop eating. So a lot of the time this does backfire on us, and these hunger and these cravings send us into off-plan eating. And sometimes we're not always tracking that or recording that because maybe we're a little ashamed or we don't want our coach to know. So if you're in a program and you're reporting all the good stuff and you're not sharing the bad stuff, that's a part of it as well. And the truth is, even if you've been in this deficit for a long period of time, like I said, if your body has adapted, your metabolism has adapted, and you go off-roading, even if it's just for one meal or one cheat day, that can have negative effects that now cause you to gain weight, although maybe for the week or for the month, you were still in a deficit. So maybe you were still in a deficit according to the previous deficit. But because your body has adapted and now you've had one binge or one off-plan food or whatever it might be, that one time can actually send you, take your results away, basically, have you going in the other direction you don't want to go, putting the weight back on. So yo-yo dieting, here's the spoiler alert, is the number one thing that will sink you if you want to improve your metabolism and have an optimally functioning metabolism. Yo-yo dieting is the secret to, basically, if I had to tell you to stop doing one thing, it would be stop the yo-yo dieting. Stop this extreme on again, off again, because you are disrupting your body every time you go from one extreme to the next. So there's the little cliff notes. There's the little teaser. Now let's dive into the deeper content underneath all of this stuff. Oh, here's a good comment here from Miss Simpson. She said, I hate the phrase, get up, eat meat, repeat. It doesn't take into account that we all have different metabolisms. It doesn't work for all. So she's talking about what I'm sure most of us here inside the carnivore community, just eat meat, your body will tell you when to stop, yada, yada. Okay, this right here is nuanced in and of itself. But it's not necessarily, and as I'm going to explain here, it's not necessarily our different metabolisms that is making that something that doesn't work for all people. But what I would say is most people have a very difficult time intuitive eating. Unless we have been eating naturally, clean, real foods for a very long period of time, we have been hijacked by processed food industry. So our signaling, which is a little bit different, related, but a little bit different from the topic of metabolism, but our signaling of when we're hungry and when we're full is a little bit thrown off. So if you're coming, especially when somebody's coming straight from standard American diet, right into something like carnivore, it's going to take some time before we can really read those signals well. And that is not even just about biological, physiological processes. That is very much about psychological processes. As you all know, I love mindset, and we can correct all of the physiological things and still have habitual mental things that we need to deal with. And I'll tell you what, I know a lot of carnivores and so many that I love so much who struggle with their weight, who the problem is not about the foods they're eating. It's that the habits haven't changed. They're still reaching for a snack every time they need an emotional fulfillment. And I still see that. I mentioned this in a previous class, I think, about how I still see it in a lot of the carnivore groups. Eat this, eat that, oh, I'm having this craving, go eat this, go eat butter, right? Telling somebody to eat when they're not hungry is keeping alive the habit of eating when you're not hungry. And it doesn't matter what diet you're on, you're not going to make progress toward body composition goals, toward fat loss by doing that. It's the habits that are the problem more so than the food choices. So I'm glad you brought that up. See, here's another example. I had the same issues with a previous coach, told I was lying about my intake, even though I was exhausted and miserable, barely able to get through a workout, let alone move more. This right here is a perfect example of why we focus so much in my coaching and in the academy on our biofeedback. Understanding what our body is telling us every week, and not just what the scale is telling us or what our photos tell us. Not just focusing on those aesthetic goals. We have aesthetic goals that drive us. And I'm always talking, I said this on the coffee chat over the weekend. There's nothing wrong with having aesthetic goals. I have aesthetic goals. Aesthetic goals is what got me in this game. But that can't be the only thing we're looking at. We have to look at how our body is speaking to us in terms of how is it feeling? How is it functioning? And that's actually a perfect segue, as I usually like to start these masterclasses, by defining our terms. So let's dive into defining our terms. What is metabolism? Can anybody tell me what metabolism is? The actual definition of metabolism. Here's a hint. It does not have the word calories anywhere near it. So, okay, I don't have any guesses yet. I think there's a little bit of a delay. All right, here's the definition of metabolism. The chemical processes that occur within a living organism in order to maintain life. The chemical processes that occur within a living organism in order to maintain life. Or a longer definition, metabolism refers to the chemical metabolic processes that take place as your body converts foods and drinks into energy and other substrates. So it's not just about energy, but converts your foods and drinks into substrates, energy. It is a complex process that combines, here's where calories come into it, energy, we'll say energy, and oxygen to create and release energy. This energy fuels body functions. So the term calories is all it is a measure of energy. It's a way that we have learned to measure energy. And so it's our way of trying to quantify this process, okay, in quantitative terms. I'm going to get into why it's fleeting to try and pinpoint our metabolic rate at any given time and try to be specific about exactly what's happening, because none of that really matters for what we're really trying to do. So really what most people are talking about when they say, my metabolism is broken, my metabolism is so slow, my metabolism is the reason I can't lose weight, I hate my metabolism. When we're talking about metabolism in terms of weight loss, usually what we're talking about is our metabolic rate. Metabolic rate and metabolism are not the same thing, okay? Metabolism encompasses so much more. It is all of these processes of our body and how our body supports them. So breathing, circulating blood, digesting food, growing and repairing cells, which we'll get to, managing hormone levels, regulating body temperature. All of this is a part of what the metabolism does. It is about supporting bodily functions. This is why, by the way, Coach Bronson hates to use the term calories. And he gets very fired up about the misnomer of metabolism being used just to talk about how many calories we burn, because that is different. Metabolic rate is what we're talking about. When we're saying metabolism, we're really talking about metabolic rate when we're applying it to weight loss. So when we're talking about metabolic rate, let's just quickly define those terms. I know I've talked about these on other videos, but I want it to be clear because I think it will be helpful for understanding what I'm going to share a little bit later. Many of us have heard of BMR or RMR, basal metabolic rate or resting metabolic rate. They're slightly different, but they're very, very similar. They're basically what the rate at which we burn fuel at rest. If we were to just lay in bed all day, never get up, just breathe, basically the very basis, the basal level, so that basal metabolic rate. Really the only difference between the BMR and the RMR is like, BMR would be like you just wake up in the morning, you're completely fasted 12 hours and you were to check your rate then, versus RMR, resting metabolic rate, would be, maybe in the afternoon, you're not fasted all day, but you haven't done anything all day and you're just sitting around. But it's very, very similar. So they get used interchangeably. So basal metabolic rate, BMR, this is the kind of thing you would go to an online calculator and it would tell you what your BMR is. It would estimate it. Let me tell you this. All of these calculators online are estimates based on algorithms. Okay, so we cannot take any of these things as the be all end all. And we should not be taking these things as the be all end all. I need to go find out how much I should be eating. So I'm going to go use an online macro calculator. I will tell you in a minute how I've said it before. I'll just say it here. I don't have my ladies start there. I want my clients to tell me everything they're eating. And then we look at how their body is responding. And are they gaining? Are they losing? That's how we figure out what their maintenance is, not calculators. Those are estimates and they can be wildly wrong. We'll get to that in a little bit. So BMR. BMR is about 60 to 70% of the energy that your body uses. So most of our metabolic rate is made up of BMR or RMR. From there, we use about 1/10, so 10% of our energy to process food into fuel. What does that mean? Simply chewing, digesting, and having, our bodily processes that move from mechanical digestion, chemical digestion, breaking the food down and eliminating it, and utilizing it and then eliminating it out of the body. So that digestive process, that is called TEF, thermic effective food, and that is about 10% of our energy requirement, our body's energy requirement, which is really all we're talking about when we're talking about metabolic rate. It's how much energy our body needs to function, right? Relating that back to metabolism as a whole, what our body needs to function. So if we're using about 60 to 70% BMR and 10% TEF, the rest of it is for physical movement. So NEAT and EAT. I think I've talked about these before on a masterclass. NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. This is what I'm doing while I'm moving my hands around, sitting here, talking to you. Anything that we do that is not considered exercise is NEAT. And NEAT is the very little known, underappreciated, undercelebrated key to whether or not you're losing fat in a deficit. I'm just going to put that right there. We'll come back to it. Okay. So NEAT, very, very important. And it is an underpinning of this metabolic adaptation, which we'll get back to. EAT, which is so funny because it's not the one for eating. It is exercise. So EAT, EAT is exercise activity thermogenesis. This is your exercise. This is whatever you do for exercise, that fuel, that energy that you're using for exercise, that's EAT. So your total metabolic rate is made up of your BMR or RMR, your TEF, your NEAT, and your EAT. All of that makes up what we call total daily energy expenditure. If you, once again, were to go to a calculator and go to a TDEE calculator, that's what they call that, total daily energy expenditure, it would spit out a number based on your body composition, your age, some data that you're going to give it. That cannot tell you where you are actually at right now. And this is the whole problem behind these myths and misconceptions. Because we think whatever this thing says is where we should be, and we're not there, so that means this is wrong. Okay, so let's get into some of these myths and misconceptions. And before I even get into any of them, well, I guess I'll come back to that. Okay. Okay, so some of the biggest myths and misconceptions I see out there is that too many people are too quick to blame metabolism for why you can't lose weight or lose body fat. Assuming that it is a slow metabolism, that's the problem. There must be something wrong with my metabolism because, and this is usually the rest of it, and I see this a lot in the keto carnivore space, Well, first of all, there is a huge misconception in the keto carnivore space that you can eat all the fat you want and you will never put body fat on your body by eating fat, because anything that your body doesn't need from fat, it'll just poop out. And let me just tell you right now, that is false. That is absolutely not true. I don't care if a person has a medical degree that's telling you it. It's not true. You cannot just eat ad libitum fat all day long, all the fat in the world, and never put on body fat. You absolutely can put on body fat by eating too much fat. And matter of fact, I would say that is the problem with the majority of people who have gone keto or carnivore, initially had some weight loss and then stalled or put on weight after that. Most of them are eating way too much fat. Okay. So yeah, let's just put that to rest right here. There is such thing as eating too much fat. Okay. Next up though, this assumption that my metabolism is slow. What I hear that associated with, and some of the arguments, it's kind of comical. I just sit back and watch because I don't want to jump in with the trolls. But we see the calories in, calories out crowd and the hormones crowd. And y'all are so intelligent. Y'all just, like I said, in the Facebook group, y'all just dodged that bullet entirely. It's not that simple. But we have the CICO crowd over here saying, no matter what, you're not in a deficit. You know, it's just that you weren't in a deficit. Get into a deficit and you'll lose weight. And then I lost weight eating more, so CICO doesn't work. Or I was in a deficit, but I wasn't losing, so CICO doesn't work. Okay, here's the thing. This might be a little bit of a harsh truth. If you thought you were in a deficit and not losing, aside from my couple of ladies who shared from a past program, because I know that program and I know what they were doing and I know they were being diligent, but most of the time, 99% of the time, when somebody is saying, I was in a deficit, but I wasn't losing, the next question would be, were you tracking? And usually it's no. I wasn't tracking, but I know I was in a deficit because I was eating less than I did before. Based on what? Assumptions, how you feel that day. It seemed like you were eating less. We cannot go off of that, y'all. The first thing I always say, I always encourage y'all, be the CEO of your body. We cannot make assumptions based on things we're not tracking. We can get some real hard data if we track what we're eating, track our body composition, track our body weight. What else do you usually hear in these keto carnivore groups that are saying it's all hormones? It has nothing to do with calories. Calories in, calories out doesn't work. Don't track, don't get on the scale. They're saying that. They're saying this stuff doesn't work. And they're also telling you not to track and to not get on the scale, not look at any data and just guess based on the amount of food you're eating. How many people, and I would love for y'all to actually answer it here because I have a lot of you that track, right? Most people in my community have tracked at some point. The number one thing I hear in the academy all the time is the shock and awe from newbies coming in who just started tracking, who hadn't been tracking for a while or maybe ever, seeing exactly the numbers and actually seeing how much they were eating and how different it was from what they assumed they were eating. So drop a comment if that was you, if you noticed, you thought you were eating so much protein and then you started tracking and you were eating like 54 grams of protein and you're like, what? I thought I was eating so much more than that. Or you notice, wow, I was eating a lot more fat than I thought I was, and I was eating so many more calories than I thought I was, or I was eating a lot less than I thought I was. Our ability, and this is not an attack on anybody, this is human nature. Our ability to estimate and guesstimate and base assumptions based on, looking at food when we have not been trained, because if we've never tracked, you have no idea how much that piece of meat, how many ounces that piece of meat is. Unless maybe somebody gives you a 16-ounce ribeye and tells you it's a 16-ounce ribeye, or you order it at a restaurant. Most of the time, People have no concept. And left to our own devices, we would not be accurate at all. So, and yeah. Yes. Thank you, Christina. Tracking my macros and the daily things helped me realize what I never realized. Ooh, yes, bliss. If it wasn't for tracking, I wouldn't have realized how little protein I was eating. Becky, I was eating way too many fat grams and not enough protein. No wonder I was gaining. No wonder. It's always this. That is always the feeling. That is always this eyes wide open, right? And this is the thing that so many people, most people who are not getting the progress they want, they're closing their eyes and they're throwing darts against the wall and they're landing all over because they don't want to see it. It can be painful to see it. We don't ever want to feel bad about ourselves, so we don't want to feel bad about eating too much. Oh my gosh, that means it's actually my fault. That means that it's my responsibility. That means that there's something I can do about it. And then that places the responsibility on me. And yikes, that scares me. I would rather just say it's my metabolism. So I'm going to guess, and I'm not going to track. I'm not going to look, and I'm just going to spin my wheels and keep going to all these other places and trying all these random, crazy protocols, like eating sardines all day and nothing else. Y'all, I'm never going to get off this sardine fast thing. Please don't do this crazy stuff. It certainly would get me to eat less if all I was eating was sardines. I could probably get 1 or 2 cans down and that would be it for the day. So that's why people lose weight doing that, y'all. They're not eating anything. Anyway, I digress. Shannon, she said, I underestimated things like nut butters. Oh, girl, haven't we all been there? Boy, that 1 tablespoon of nut butter, it looked like a tablespoon. But when you weigh that sucker, it's like half a freaking cup. Indeed, I've been there. And those nut butters add up quick. So the blaming the metabolism, the CICO is wrong, but then also the other camp that's just, it's as simple as calories in, calories out. So fix it, just eat less and move more, right? That's not helpful for anyone. The unfortunate truth is that CICO is actually right. It's actually correct. Calories in, calories out. Or better said, energy in, energy out. The energy balance equation is how we lose body fat. We have to create a caloric deficit. We have to be in a state of energy depletion for our body to want to take fat from our body and use it for fuel because it's not getting enough energy exogenously. As long as we keep putting enough energy, enough fuel into our body has no reason to take it off of our body and use it for fuel. So we do have to be in a deficit. The way that that gets misconstrued or railed against is because the energy out side of the equation is so complex that we will never be able to pinpoint exactly what our energy expenditure is. Despite all the wearables in the world, they're wrong most of the time. By the way, you can't trust this thing, just like you can't trust those online calculators. You know what you can trust? Learning to track accurately, plugging in what you're consuming, looking at what it is, and then watching your progress over time because you're looking at all of the data to tell you whether you're progressing or not. Then you have hard data on both sides to compare and say, here's where I'm at, here's the results that I'm getting or the lack thereof, and then you will know what you need to do to move forward. And the tips I'm going to give you tonight should help as well. So let's get one thing clear. There is no such thing as a broken metabolism, okay? You do not have a broken metabolism that cannot be fixed. I want to just put that out there right now. So if anybody's like, oh my God, it's my metabolism. And some of my ladies have understood, because we did look at TDEE calculators, total daily energy expenditure, and they looked at how much they're eating now and how much this calculator is saying they should be able to eat for their body composition and their age and their gender and all that. And they're like, oh my God, this thing says I should be able to eat 2,000 calories a day and maintain, and yet I'm only eating 1,500 and maintaining. How in the world am I ever going to get my consumption up to 2,000? That must mean that my metabolism is super slow. And it feels like you'll never get there. Okay, so I understand that frustration. That's a little bit more of a more educated, frustration there, because you're not just blaming it on metabolism without looking at your data. My ladies have looked at their data and they're saying, my goodness, it seems like my metabolism is so slow. So how do I fix this? So we'll get into that. The truth, though, about metabolism is that it doesn't break. It is adaptive, because the body is so beautifully adaptive. So it's called metabolic adaptation or adaptive thermogenesis. And it is not a bad thing. It is simply what our bodies do. If we gain weight, we will have a higher metabolism. Metabolic rate. If we lose weight, so typically that's how it works. When we are in a larger body, we require more energy to sustain that body. When we lose a significant amount of weight, preferably body fat, we require less energy to live in a smaller body. It only makes sense if you understand the definition of metabolism, because we have all these bodily systems and it's what our body needs. And when we have larger organs and we have more mass, we have more going on in our body, we have more to support, and we need more to support it. Okay? Metabolism is complex, and it is, as I mentioned, practically impossible to predict the exact numbers at any given time. That would be a fleeting thing to try to do. So I would encourage you not to try to figure out exactly what your BMR and your TDEE and all these numbers are. That is not the thing that's going to get you what you really want, which is the fat loss, right? Whenever we are asking about metabolism, what the real question behind that is, why am I not losing weight? Let's be real, right? That's really what the question is. Why am I not losing body fat? So real quick, let's talk about fast versus slow metabolism. Having a faster or a slower metabolism or metabolic rate does not dictate whether or not you can lose weight or body fat. I want to say that again to be very, very clear. Your metabolic rate, whether your metabolism is fast or slow, does not dictate whether or not you can lose body fat. Regardless of what your metabolic rate is, you can still lose body fat wherever you are in that level of energy needed to support your body, okay? So here's a quick little aside from the Cleveland Clinic I thought was kind of interesting. Someone with a fast metabolism or a fast BMR burns more calories at rest. If you have a slow metabolism or a slow BMR, your body needs fewer calories to keep it going. A fast metabolism does not necessarily lead to thinness. In fact, studies show that people with overweight or obesity often have fast metabolisms. Their bodies need more energy to keep basic body functions going. So all that to say, that was just an aside to say, let's not make it all about our metabolism. Okay? So let's talk about metabolic adaptation, when and why it happens, and then how some of the ways that you can combat that adaptation if you are in a fat loss phase, and then how you can improve your metabolism, or rather your ability to lose body fat now or in the future. So metabolic adaptation happens when we have trained our bodies to live on less. Some of the things that drive metabolic adaptation the most is deep, deep caloric deficits. Hello, fasting. Fasting, extreme dieting, the main ones as it relates to food is fasting and extreme dieting, extreme caloric restriction, cutting way back, just eating less, right? That concept of eating less. The other thing that drives it big time is loss of muscle mass, sarcopenia. When we are in an extreme diet or a fasting situation, not strength training, and not eating enough protein to support our muscle maintenance or building, we lose muscle, especially in a caloric deficit. You could lose muscle at maintenance if you're not eating enough protein and you're not strength training. You're not giving your body any stimulus to any reason to hold on to the muscle. This is also something we see, I'm sorry, but my cardio bunnies, either in the past or currently. If you were a runner, if you played a lot of sports that are more endurance sports, not strength sports, right? You had a level of activity that was up here, but it was a type of activity, especially if it's an endurance sport, that did not require a lot of muscle mass. A lot of the time, you taught your body to burn all this fuel with all this activity. But at the same time, you were not sending a signal for your body to hold on to muscle. This is why a lot of the time we see marathon runners, long distance endurance athletes, very thin, but not body. They don't look like bodybuilders, right? Basically, cardio, endurance, long distance cardio teaches the body to pare down muscle. So you can be good at that sport, right? So you lose muscle doing that, and that can drive your metabolic rate down. On top of that, if you were doing a ton of cardio and now maybe later in life, your lifestyle changes, you have new responsibilities, you're doing less of that, you cut down on the cardio, which is something that I actually encourage my ladies to do, cut down on the cardio, replace it with strength training. But let's say you cut back on the cardio, let's say you don't replace it with strength training. And now all of a sudden you're gaining weight. And you're like, what the heck is going on? Why is my metabolism slow? Well, it wasn't. You taught it to exist on high calories because you had all this energy expenditure. You've changed your energy expenditure. When you cut back on your energy expenditure because you're no longer playing sports, or at least not at the level that you were, your body's not burning as much. So if you're eating the same thing you were eating before, you're going to start putting weight on because energy in, energy out still is part of the equation. So another thing we want to track, and that we track inside the academy, is how much cardio are you doing? How much activity are you doing throughout your day? Track your step count. When you can quantify these things, and this is the kind of thing that bodybuilders do, because what are we trying to achieve? We are trying to get to low levels of body fat while maintaining this muscle we worked so hard to build. So tracking all the factors is what helps us do that. We don't want to do so much excessive cardio that we're cutting down on our muscle, because we don't want to get to stage again and be skin and bones. Right? We work hard to put the muscle on, and then we work to keep that muscle on, which is another way that we combat metabolic adaptation. So why does it happen? Subsisting on low calories for a long period of time, usually paired with not eating enough protein. So you not eating enough protein, not training in a way that teaches your body to build muscle. So you will tend to lose muscle, or potentially overdoing it on the cardio. So undereating, overdoing it with cardio, not strength training, not eating enough protein. Those are the main things that are going to drive that metabolic adaptation. Even with eating enough protein, strength training, cutting back on cardio or not doing any, and slowly dieting, the way bodybuilders do for a show, your metabolic rate does slow down. That is just part of what happens, because as you diet, even if it's a slow diet, although that is a good tip for keeping it from happening so quickly or being as extreme. Going slow is one of the things that I do with my clients. We take small deficits, incremental deficits, so we can combat that process. But it will still happen, and it's nothing to be afraid of. It's just that to continue making progress, you have to find a new deficit every time your body settles at a new maintenance. So you teach it, okay, now this is what we're doing. It catches on and it's like, oh, this is our maintenance. And then you stop losing. So, okay, now we got to cut a little bit more. And so what we like to do is this balancing act between activity level and consumption of food, because we don't want to just keep cutting from your food to where you're not eating anything. So we balance it by not starting with any cardio, and then we start with your macros, we find your maintenance, we go into a small deficit. We do that for a period of time, and then we'll bring in some cardio, and then we might cut a little more, and then we'll bring in maybe a little more cardio. And that's essentially the long and short of how we do it to get to stage, so that we are doing these, we're playing with these two factors, the energy in and the energy out. But what I see too much in the keto space and the carnivore space is drastically cutting calories, cutting food, and protein along with it, especially more with keto than carnivore. But even in carnivore, this whole 80-20 protein thing, fat to protein thing, you're barely eating enough protein to keep your body alive. And you're not hungry because it's a very satiating diet, which Cynthia brought up earlier. Let's see if I can find that comment, because it was a good one. And now it relates perfectly. Here it is. Yes. A unique problem with carnivore is that it can take away all cravings, hunger, at least for me. So it's a way too easy to eat extremely low energy. Exactly that when you're doing this, fat and protein together are incredibly satiating. Separately, they're each satiating. Protein is incredibly satiating. But let's say you eat this big ribeye and then you're not hungry the rest of the day. And that's one ribeye. You cannot subsist on one ribeye alone, okay? Contrary to popular belief. But that's what's happening for a lot of people in carnivore. They end up not eating enough. Same thing in keto. So let's talk about, I mentioned these, but I'll go through them again. Some ways that we can keep from the body adapting downward too much during a fat loss phase is going slow, not doing it too quickly, not doing these big 500 calorie, 1,000 calorie deficits, not fasting, putting in diet breaks or refeeds, and I have masterclasses on both of those if you want to dive deeper into one of those topics. But how to properly do a diet break or a refeed. By diet break, I don't mean binge your face off for a week and then go back to your diet. That would be yo-yo dieting, and that's another thing I mentioned is a big problem that causes this metabolic adaptation. So that's during a fat loss phase. That's part of the way that you can keep that adaptation from going to fast. And then also strength training, maintaining the activities that send the signal for your body to maintain and build muscle. And in between, I'm going to say something that sounds crazy to some women. In between fat loss phases, meaning you're not in a fat loss phase forever, all the time, always dieting, which so many women are like, yeah, I've just been dieting for the last 25 years. But how many women, I think, God, it would be so powerful to do a poll and find out how many women in the academy or in the Facebook group have ever done, even once in their life, a strategic muscle building phase where you are not trying to lose weight. That is another powerful way that you can reverse this metabolic adaptation, or just adapt in a different direction. So spending time in a building phase is so powerful. And this is what bodybuilders do. These are the seasons of the bodybuilder's year. And these are the things that I teach in my programs. We do the build program. We do the shred program so you can learn not to be trying to shred all the time, because you're not going to improve your metabolism by always trying to lose body fat. Okay. Wait, this is the one I wanted to put up there. Do you know how much I love hearing that high cardio is not good? I got you, girl. I will always tell you that because I'm not a huge fan. I love walking every day with lifting. I love it. I'm a huge fan of a daily walk. And that is all you need. You don't need to do a lot more than that. As a matter of fact, something I wanted to mention before that I skipped mentioning is that this little less known, under celebrated or appreciated concept of NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, actually has a lot to do with the adaptation. Because a lot of the time when we are in a deficit, we're not getting the energy coming in from our food, we feel tired. Whether it's conscious or subconscious, our bodies feel tired and don't want to move as much. So the body adapts. Meaning, when we are not exercising, we are chilling out a little bit too much. We're not as fidgety. We're not getting up and moving around like we normally do. So another thing that bodybuilders have to be very cognizant of when we're in a cut is to not get too lazy in our non-training times, because the body will compensate. It's like, oh, we're not getting energy. Okay, pare down energy. Let's conserve energy by, normally I would get up and get some water, but I'll just sit here and work longer and get it later. Right? Or a couple of things I heard the other week in the group. I want to go for my walk outside, but my sneakers are upstairs and I don't want to have to go upstairs to get the sneakers to go for the walk. So maybe I just won't go right now, right? These are the tricks our mind plays on us because our body is, once again, it's trying to protect us. So it's like, oh, okay, we've got to conserve energy because we're not eating, we're not getting as much energy from our food. So don't move as much. And these are like the subconscious, unconscious things we might not even notice, that we're just not burning as much as we were burning before. Our bodies are not using the fuel because it's not getting it. So it's trying to protect us. Okay. So there's another reason not to be mad at your body for this or your metabolism for this, because the body is doing everything it's doing just to protect us. Oh, these are some beautiful, vulnerable posts. Too afraid to strategically gain. I got you, girl. When you're ready, I got you. Too focused on trying to get lean. Yeah, everybody always is. Christina agrees. Never have. I would love to be in a building phase. I never have, because of this constant body fat reduction. Yep. It's always the focus. Simpson, great question. So if I haven't found my maintenance, should I not be adding cardio? So she's talking about finding her maintenance calories, right? We said we always start with finding our maintenance calories first. The question is, because I think with you, we were still working on reverse dieting with you, right? We're trying to find your threshold on the higher end. Correct me if I'm wrong. And the cool thing is I'm about to get into the cardio or the activity level side of things. So I'm going to kind of answer that right here anyway. Wait, but just remind me, I think that we're still trying to find your threshold, meaning finding your maintenance by increasing calories to see where your threshold is, rather than finding your maintenance to go into a deficit. Pretty sure that's what we're doing. Okay. But as it relates to the, should I not be adding cardio? One of the things I like to do for, really it could be for either side of the equation. Let's say you found your maintenance, right? And you are either wanting to improve your metabolism. So we're going into a reverse dieting phase, a metabolic restoration phase, right? We're trying to bring that metabolic rate up so that you can eat more and maintain at a higher level of calories. I actually like adding activity, because that is a way that we can teach your body that, hey, we burn more calories, so we need more food. So actually, I would love to change the eat less and move more to eat more and move more. If we really want our bodies to be these incredible machines, we need to fuel them, and then we need to move them. We need them moving. We need them active. So I actually like cardio I'm calling it cardio, but really activity. We'll start there. I always encourage, and I just did a cardio lesson for the ladies inside the academy on how and when to add cardio. And my first tip there is to always start by tracking your step count or your daily activity level, and then increase your daily activity level, not necessarily by adding structured cardio. It doesn't have to be structured cardio. As a matter of fact, it would be much better if it's not structured cardio, because what we want you to do is teach your body to be this active machine that is not vegging out on the couch, gets up to get the water when you want the water, and doesn't stop yourself from doing these activities, but that the default mechanism in your brain is, if I want something or I need something from the other room, I'm going to get up and get it, rather than sitting here and asking somebody else to bring it to me. We want to teach your body to do that, so that when you're 80 years old, you're not decrepit, you haven't lost muscle mass, you're not weak and frail, and that your inclination is not to sit around all day. So the best way that you can really improve your metabolism over time is to teach yourself to basically be an active human being. And it doesn't have to be that structured cardio. But hopefully that answers your question, Simpson. You can add more activity, even if we're trying to find that threshold on the higher end. So cardio, structured cardio, or in my opinion, just adding activity would be a great way to start either your deficit or your reverse diet. It's a great one for both of those. Because what I really don't want us to do, unless we have to, is we don't want to take food away. And that is because food is so much more than just calories. And this is Bronson's argument. This is why he hates the term calories, because what we get from our food and what our food does for our bodies is so much more than fuel. The fuel is just one small piece of it. The nutrients we get from our food, not just the macronutrients, the protein, carbs, and fats, but the micronutrients of that food are supporting every single thing, every process of our bodies. So what we don't want to do is take nutrition away from our bodies. We don't want to take nutrients away from our bodies if we can help it. So I love increase the activity before we talk about cutting from our food supply, from our nutrient supply. Okay. Okay, and Simpson confirms for me. Yes, we are increasing calories to find the spot where I start gaining. Yes, exactly. Okay. So yeah, you can add activity. I think it's totally fine to add activity, because wouldn't it be amazing if we could just get you up, just keep on creeping those calories up? That would be awesome. And it's very likely you could still just get some fat loss in the process of it. So, and I could do a whole separate masterclass on this, but you absolutely can gain muscle and lose body fat at the same time, even though the fitness industry will not tell you that. All right, let's see. Oh, Christina, great question. I'm going to get to your question in a moment, because I have these questions I haven't answered yet. But first, let's talk about just a couple of other things you can do to improve your metabolism or your ability to lose body fat, either now or in the future. So I already said stop fasting and yo-yo dieting and extreme dieting. So that's what not to do. What to do, the biggest thing that you can do for your body, 3 things. Number 1, eat more protein from real food forms. Remember at the beginning when I talked about thermic effective food, that thermic effective food, meaning the calories we burn just eating, digesting, breaking down our food, it is the highest in real food protein. I say real food protein because processed packaged food, so like your protein bars and your protein shakes and those kinds of things, and then protein supplements, protein powder that you make into a shake or whatever, when you eat the real food version a steak versus a bar or a shake, you're going to burn a lot more calories eating the steak than the shake. Okay? Steak over shakes. Steaks over shakes. That should be a t-shirt. Okay, y'all, tell me if that should be a t-shirt, and I will make that t-shirt. Steaks over shakes. I love that so much. I love that so much. Okay, so eat steaks, eat more protein, real food form. That is so huge because not only will it, when you're eating more protein, you're going to be more satiated. You'll be less likely to overconsume fuel calories, meaning carbs and fats. And the excess fuel that we don't need is what gets packed on as body fat. So just changing that one thing alone, if you shift your macro balance by eating more protein and less carbs and or fats, you will shift the balance toward building muscle and burning body fat. And it's possible with this other one I'm going to say that you could do both of those things at the same time while eating at your maintenance calories without having to cut at all. Just shift the macro balance. If you've been doing 80-20, fat up here and protein down here, I wouldn't necessarily flip it. I wouldn't go 20% fat, but take that fat down, bring the protein up. I guarantee you, you'll start getting results you never saw before. And that's kind of the secret of how a lot of these high-fat carnivores get their results when they come in with me. So that paired with resistance training, weight training, lifting to teach your body to build muscle. So exercising in a way that builds muscle, not excessive cardio, but doing resistance training. Okay. And then simply building more muscle on your body, or even reducing the ability of your body, reducing the propensity for sarcopenia of muscle loss, maintaining and building muscle in and of itself will improve your metabolism. So another reason why, and this was a good question from Tona in the group, she said, I'd like to better understand why some seem to have such a slow metabolism. She mentioned how she's always been an active person, but it's been difficult to lose weight. And she's wondering if it has to do with her heart rate, because she can do all this activity and her heart rate doesn't get very high. Well, I want to say right here and make it very clear, that is a great thing that just means that you have an incredible VO2 max. And that is because you have such an active background, but also that means you're the person I was talking to earlier who had been doing all this kind of endurance exercise with your tennis and pickleball and stuff like that, right? So that kind of stuff taught your body to pare down muscle, to be lean, which also makes it more difficult to lose weight when you're already lean. It's going to be a lot harder to lose it when you don't have much to lose. But you, number one, taught your body to exist burning a lot of calories. And so when you're not doing as much activity as you once were, that's already, now you're taking that energy out and you've subtracted the energy out. So you're not burning as much, so you're not going to be able to eat as much. And then the other side of that is you likely pared down muscle, and now we've got to build that muscle back up. And then you've also got age on that side of it too. It gets harder to build muscle with age, but that is only because of the lifestyle factors, because most people get more sedentary as they age and they're not doing strength training. So I wanted to bring that up, make sure I answered that question. I don't think actually it's that you have a slow metabolism, but once you've watched all of that, you probably understand it all a little bit better. And all it's going to take is exactly what we're doing with you, is continue to strength train, eat all that protein, don't do as much cardio, and we can restore, I know she's I think we're in a fat loss phase for her right now. So then we can go into a restoration phase. So the other thing, so eat more protein, shift your macro balance toward more protein, prioritizing protein, building muscle through strength training, and move more in general. Moving more in general, teaching your body to be more active in the NEAT, mostly with the NEAT, not through the exercise, but through the NEAT. We don't want to have to do 2 hours of cardio a day to be able to stay lean. But if we teach ourselves that we're going to get up a lot throughout the day and do things throughout the day, we're just teaching ourselves to be more active. That is going to help maintain a higher burn throughout the day with the little things that we don't even notice. Okay. And then I'm going to give you one more kind of unique thing. I've never done this myself, but I heard about, now I don't know if it was a study. It might have been a study or it might have been an N=1. Take it for what it is. But this bodybuilder, while he was in a cut, in a deep deficit to reduce the adaptive thermogenesis, his metabolism slowing down, he wore a 35-pound weight vest like all day long. So he effectively tricked his body into thinking he weighed 35 pounds more. Remember I said, bigger body means generally a faster, a higher metabolic rate. So while he was cutting, his body thought he weighed more and his metabolic rate didn't slow down as much. So that was just kind of fascinating, but I don't know if you want to carry around extra weight every day. I wouldn't want to do it for probably the minimal gains. I would rather just cut down when I need to cut and then do a proper reverse diet, restore my metabolism afterwards. Okay, y'all are in for the Steaks Over Shakes t-shirt. Okay, heck yeah. I love it. Yes to the t-shirt. That's a t-shirt for sure. Okay, cool. We got to make that happen. Boop, boop, boop. Let's see. This was Christina's question, and she asked it in the group too. Why can my husband drink coffee with loads of sugar all day without eating, then come home and start eating junk food from 5 to 10 p.m., and then here's the rest of it? And never gain weight and not be diagnosed as diabetic. He's been 30 pounds heavier in the past. Does he have a tapeworm or something? All right, so I'll tell you what's happening here. I mean, he's not eating all day, right? So this is a good example of how just eating sugar doesn't make somebody a diabetic. It's not as simple as what a lot of people put it out there to be. You could do what her husband is doing, which I would not encourage, but he's effectively replacing, okay, if you've ever, I know you've heard of this, like fat fasting in the keto carnivore space, right? Fat fasting would be you fast all day, you're not eating food, but you're just eating some fat to keep you going until you have your meal and then you eat your OMAD, right? I actually used to do that. I had a coach, my very first bodybuilding coach, or second, we had that as a part of our protocol. And I do that with some of my clients sometimes if we want to go that route. If we're in a place where we want to try that for a very particular reason. So it would be like little fat feedings all day and then an OMAD, right? On keto. So essentially he's doing that, but on the carb side. He's like, if he's drinking coffee with sugar all day, he's putting energy into his body in the form of sugar to carry him throughout the day, but without boluses of food. And then at the end of the night, she's saying he's eating a bunch of junk, but the question is, right, is he tracking it all? Probably not, right? So just like I said earlier, we can't make these assumptions. You know, they might not be eating quality food, but I guarantee you he's probably just not eating a lot when it comes to calories. And here's the thing, carbs are half the calories of fat. So on a keto carnivore diet, it's easier actually to overconsume calories because a smaller amount of food is higher calorically dense than carbs. So you could be eating carbs and get half the calories of fat. But most people, when they're overconsuming, are overconsuming these highly palatable, hyper-processed carbs and fats foods, and then overdoing it on the calories. So what I would guess in his case is that he's not in a surplus. It's as simple as that. If he were in a caloric surplus, if he was eating more than what his body needed, he would be gaining body fat. Absolutely. The other thing, I'm not sure if your husband trains or works out. what his body composition is, how much muscle mass he has. But let's say in that junk he's eating at night, he's not really eating any protein and he's not training. It's very likely, and I hate to say this, but it's very likely that he is losing muscle and his body composition may be going in the opposite direction than you would want it to go. He could be gaining fat and losing muscle, and you're not seeing that on the scale. So if he's not adding pounds to the scale, we don't know what's happening with his body composition underneath that. This is another reason why I always say the scale doesn't tell the whole story. We can't see it all. So it's as simple as that. And the truth is, as long as you're not over consuming, a lot of the time these things are not going to end up leading to diabetes. In a state of a deficit, you're not driving that metabolic syndrome, which is a whole nother side. Metabolic syndrome is not really related to metabolic rate or metabolism in that regard. Different concept. But those diseases, those metabolic syndrome, diseases, cardiac, diabetes, all of these things, they're more present when there's overconsumption. So yeah, I will tell you, my dad is very much like that as well, right? Doesn't eat much. He'll eat junk, but he's probably not over consuming for what his body needs. So he's not putting body fat on. Okay, let's see. There were some other questions here. Oh, here's a good question. How is fat fasting better than PSMF? With PSMF, you are meeting protein goals daily and preserving muscle. Fat fasting would not meet protein goals and only a few days per week. Okay, so I wouldn't say that fat fasting is better or worse than PSMF. I would say there are situations where I would use one or use the other. So it's completely dependent on the client. And then both of those are protocols I don't recommend using willy-nilly, or I've only ever used them individually with specific situations where a client might benefit from one versus the other. And then she follows with, I know fat is necessary for hormones and protein is necessary for muscle. That's a basic simplification. You don't need to do either of those protocols. Most people don't need to do either of those, but I would consider in each of the client situations, like for instance, if we had somebody who, for instance, hey, Mary's probably here still. I know she was here earlier. We did fat fasting with her because she has PMR. I was about to call it BMR for basal metabolic rate. PMR, it's a brain condition. So we really need to keep her fats high to support her brain. So we went the fat fasting route rather than a PSMF kind of route. And it really wasn't rather than. PSMF, I rarely ever use for anyone. I just really don't like that approach. It is rough and unnecessary for most people. I knew Mary was still here. Yes, PMR, not BMR. Hey, Coach Nicole is on. What up? She just finished her live. Howdy, neighbor. Glad to have you here. All right, let's see what other questions I had in here. Okay, I think I already answered this one. I'd love to know what I can do to boost my metabolism besides exercise. Yep. Let's see. Deb said, I was asked, how do you know how much to exercise if you're eating all these calories? As in, we must have to move or burn more to be able to eat all these calories. She said, I tried to explain our calories would be based on our needs, but I don't think it was understood. And the key here, and this is one of the first principles I teach in the academy as well, we do not exercise to burn calories. Hard stop. Exercise in the world of body composition, aesthetics, bodybuilding, burning body fat and building muscle, exercise is not for calorie burn. We train. We don't call it exercise. We train to build muscle. So we don't equate how many hours or how much exercise we need to do to justify the food that we eat. We fuel our body for exactly, as she said, what it needs. And then we train for the purposes of teaching or sending the signal to our body to utilize what we're eating, not just the fuel, not just the calories, but especially the protein, the building block to build back up and repair in recovery our muscles so that they will build. And then we manage our fuel. So I guess, probably what this person is getting at is, energy balance. We're talking about the energy balance equation, right? And that would be more of managing the fuel calories, meaning calories from carbs and or fats, and our cardio or our daily activity level outside of our exercise. So I love to separate that concept of exercising for caloric burn. Lifting weights doesn't burn a lot of calories. And Deb is one of many who have realized the harsh reality of, when I was doing cardio, like I got this data on my wearable that told me I burned all these calories, or I had a higher step count because it was counting my steps. And then when I have it on while I'm training, it doesn't give me all those steps. And it's like, yeah, we have to get out of quantifying this energy balance and making everything about energy balance. We really want to look at food, not for as calories, but we want to look at it for that nutrition that it's providing our body, so much more than just the fuel. But we do need to manage the fuel so that we're not over consuming and underactive so that we put on a bunch of body fat. And we don't want to be under consuming, whether we're under or overactive. That's what's going to drive that metabolism down. Okay. This is kind of a related but a little bit different question from Becky. Could you please address gastric surgery and getting enough to eat? When you can only eat small meals and don't get hungry, it's hard to eat enough. Yeah, that is something I definitely have some ladies who are in that camp. And we manage it the best we can. So when I give them their macros, for one, it's, don't feel like you have to jump up to this higher level of protein that I assign them right away. So we want to do it in incremental steps from whatever they're eating now to the goal. And I generally tell people somewhere between your ideal, basically your ideal body weight. You want to be eating around your ideal body weight in protein at least. That can be a lot for people who might be barely eating any protein right now, and especially those who have had surgery. So you can utilize, in that case, you can utilize things like protein shakes to help get there. And then one of the best tips I give for those ladies is cooking your food differently. So like cutting into a steak, as I mentioned, the thermic effect of food, right? It is hard to chew and break down these solid forms of food. So a steak versus something like slow cooked, shredded, pulled beef, chicken, pork, whatever it might be, it would be a lot easier. Lamb, I love to do my lamb leg in the crock pot. That's going to be my dinner tonight. But when you have this slow cooked, pulled meats, or your ground beef, your ground meats, which actually Bronson now does this a lot. He actually puts the ground beef in the crock pot with a little bit of water. Sometimes he'll do some tomato paste in there, and it breaks it down even further. So like the burger, the ground beef. Hey, Erin, she just joined in. Yes, we're still going. You probably could have guessed it because I was hype about this topic. Oh, yes, Mary, I'm going to pop this up here. Burger soup is a great idea for ladies with bypass. Yeah. Doing soups, stews, slow cooked, anything, pretty much. It's breaking it down for you. And here's my little pro tip for slow cooking. Pour a little apple cider vinegar in there over the meat when you first put it in the crock pot with your water and your salt and whatever else you put in there. It will help break down the meat even further because that acid helps break it down. So, cooking things like that to where they're easier to get down, you can actually eat more quantities of those things without having that fullness in the stomach as you would with like a steak or grilled chicken or something like that. So that's a great tip. And then doing things like egg drop soup, where you're putting, eggs in soup so you can get that protein and that good fat. You can do some protein shakes in that case as well. I would add some fat to it so you're getting a good balance of both, that kind of a thing. And then the other thing too would be like eating more meals throughout the day and spacing them out so that you can have smaller meals throughout the day. A lot of these are the same kind of tips we do, with bodybuilding. When I'm in a building phase and I need to eat more and it's hard to eat that much because I'm full, I eat more of those slow cooked meats and those things that I can eat more easily. When I'm cutting calories and when I'm getting low and I'm closer to a stage and I'm lean and I'm hungry, this is where I'm going to be doing like the grilled chicken and the grilled steak, because now it's taking longer to eat it. It's more work to eat it. So I'm also getting that extra calorie burn. It makes me feel fuller. So it's different, than, and I'm more likely to eat less of it when I'm having to do it like that. So these things can work kind of both ways. Oh yeah, she says, my other sister that had bypass eats 6 times a day and she's trying to get enough protein. Yeah, in that case, that's definitely one where I would go have more meals throughout the day and make them small meals. Another thing I should mention with metabolism too is that it gets mentioned that, more frequent, smaller meals throughout the day is going to rev your metabolism. That's been debunked. You really don't need to be consuming 6-7 meals a day, which a lot of bodybuilders do. Now they do it a lot of the time too because they are carb fueled. They have more carbs and they're low fat. And so they need that energy more frequently because the carb energy burns faster and gets out of your system faster. So they need to replenish their energy a lot faster. Another beautiful benefit of keto and carnivore is that we don't have to eat around the clock because we're not running out of energy that quickly, because fat is a slower burning fuel. So it carries us over for longer periods of time. But I generally recommend a good 3 meals a day, even on keto carnivore. If you are eating higher carb, like a low carb, but higher carb on the higher end of the spectrum, then you may want 4 or 5 meals a day to spread that out. But for women, I really encourage to stop all this intermittent fasting. Stop waiting until afternoon to eat your first meal. Eat that first meal in the morning. Get that bolus of protein. There are so many benefits. I generally recommend, and this is from Andrew Huberman, in regards to eating windows, eating that first meal by 10 a.m. and making it a nice high protein meal. I love 10, 2, and 6. That's like the ideal eating schedule for me. Breakfast at 10, lunch at 2, dinner at 6. I'll be a little late tonight because I went on and on. But yeah, I like a good 3 meals a day. All right, ladies, I hope this was wildly helpful for you. I will drop a little plug because Coach Mary Grace and I have been chatting about the next program that's coming in the summer after the prep program ends. The summer shred is coming back, but we are going to be doing something special, and that is because so many of our community, our tribe, are now becoming more educated about metabolic restoration, reverse dieting, learning to build your metabolism, that for those of you who are not wanting to do a shred, not wanting to cut, when we do the shred, and it will be a challenge, it will not just be a program this time, we are bringing the actual challenge back. There will be a shred component and there will be a restore component. So if you get to choose what your primary focus during our 6 weeks, because it will be the 6-week shred again. During that short period of time, 6 weeks, you can choose between the shred, which is a mini cut, or you can choose restore, which we will do a 6-week reverse diet with you and teach you how to build that metabolism there. So really excited about that. More to come on that as we solidify the dates, the pricing, and all that good stuff. Of course, if you're in the academy, you will likely get all the deets first. So we got 2 more months. We're going into our 2nd month of the prep starting April, 2 more months in the prep. And then we're looking at having June off. June will be a regular academy month, so we'll get some new programming. So if you're in the prep right now, you'll be able to stay. If you want to stick around and join the academy, you'll be able to stick around for June and continue into the next program if you would like. Yeah, so that's what it's looking like. We're looking at a July 1st start date for the Shred Restore program. So more deets to come. Thank you all for hanging around for so long with me tonight as I went on and on and on about this topic. Thanks, Diane. Glad you got something out of it. All right, ladies, it was great to have you here. As usual, if you have any requests for future topics, drop them in the Facebook group, shoot me a DM, or if you're in the academy, you can drop them there too. Otherwise, I will probably be inspired by you all and come up with the next topic just by something one of you shares. So keep sharing in the group. I love seeing your updates in there. I will check y'all out there. Have a wonderful rest of your Monday. Go crush it. The flex for Juliana, who I know will be watching later, and just go have a wonderful week. I love you all. Bye.